Oh, I also want to share this with you. We recently had a guest from Microsoft on Long Island. Microsoft is opening up retail stores, for those of you who don't know it, and I don't know if they're coming to your area, but they are in Huntington on Long Island. And the business developer person, and he was so taken back by the quality of the caliber of the people, because I feel like I'm looking at my own groups in terms of your success and who you are. He wrote, the partnerships I've gained are invaluable. I can honestly say that the caliber of ABA members, the depth of their individual networks, and the best practices shared are a tremendous resource to anyone looking to advance their business initiatives. I didn't ask him to write it. It's what he observed. It's what he sees. And the more we have opportunities to meet the people that you know, to grow what we already have going here, the more potential there is for everybody. And I would encourage you. This man has brought me, I don't know, 8 or 10 really, really interesting people. You know, whether people want to commit to be an ABA is a personal decision. There's lots of reasons why people do not commit to do that. But for John, we had a guest that made the difference and will continue to make the difference, because obviously that's going to be big business going forward. So again, I would encourage you. One of the other things that I really would like to also give you my opinion about is asking and listening. We are not really comfortable asking. It's not something, I mean, some people are. Some people have no problem doing it. But for the most part, we don't want to give the opinion that we need something because we're already successful. And short story, board member of the Long Island Association, very successful person, came to me. He's up there with the upper echelon of the business community on Long Island. Came to me, I never get anything from that group. I'm like, okay, that's not what they do there, by the way. They don't network. So he came to ABA and said, oh my God, this is a drink of water, this is great, this is wonderful. You know, just because people look like they're successful, it doesn't mean that they don't need the business. We all need business. And in this particular time and place that we find ourselves in, the evolution of, the great man, we need it more than ever because of all the uncertainty. It is really important that you understand that the assets in your database are your next deal. Not necessarily because you're doing business with those people, but because you're connecting them. And that's a very important role that you have. You need to be prepared to ask for what you want. And that takes a little thought process, because every person here went around the room and introduced themselves. We know what you do. We don't know what you want. When I ask people this question, sometimes they can't even articulate what they want. You need to spend some quiet time making sure that people know who your ideal client is, what you did recently, what problems you're solving for other people, so that they get this. You cannot make an assumption. There's so much competition, so much noise, that some of the people that have been here a long time may have the impression or the attitude that, hey, they know what I do. They might not know what you're doing now. And that's a very important key for today's world in networking. It's really about current events. It's about what you did yesterday. It's about what you're working on now. It's those illustrations that give people and give the brain a place to go to. It's very, very key that you understand this, because you can come in, you can go out, come in, go out. But if you're not prepared and you're not saying something that's resonating or that's painting a picture for people, you're missing the boat, because you're looking for them to get you a transaction. We're not talking about transactions. We're talking about what you're doing and how it relates to other people and other things in your life that have some relevance. It's all about that connection. It's the arcing that takes place when you're speaking and somebody else is listening. That brings me to listening. One of the things at ABA that you get to experience over time that you don't really know you're experiencing is that listening muscle is constantly getting exercised. When you make opportunity calls, those skills that you're developing, those questions that you're asking, those times that you're spending, it's a muscle. And when you're not doing it, there's no place for that stuff to go. And remember what I said, it's all energy. So if you're not putting it in, you're not getting it out. Okay. One of the things that I said to Bob that I would like to do for you this morning is I said to you before what we're not. I would like to know from you, and Bob wants to know too, what frustrates you? What you would, in terms of networking, what you're experiencing that we might be able to help sort of, dispel the myths, if you will. If anybody has any questions that you would like to ask about this, I'm all ears, because for 25 years I've been observing behavior. I've been watching people who are wildly successful and other people who may never be successful. Yes.
So, it's Ellen, right?
Yes, Bob?
Earlier you mentioned the little scenario about that person didn't follow up and how that sort of took on its own life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all of us are wondering, like, what's the etiquette behind that? So if I leave here today
Mm-hmm.
and I met somebody I didn't meet before,
Mm-hmm.
and I either give them a call, email them, or a combination of things, like, what's my responsibility, not theirs, because you can't see that. You can only take responsibility for yourself, I think.
Yeah.
So where does my responsibility lie if they don't respond to me in X amount of time? What's appropriate without becoming a royal pain in the you-know-where?
So I have to ask the big question. Is this a prospect of yours, or is this a networking opportunity to
Just
develop?
somebody I met that thought that, I might want to have a connection with.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know where it's going yet.
Right. So I'm going to answer first, and then I'm going to let Bob answer, because we may have different opinions. I said it before. It's a very complex world that we live in, and we don't know why people aren't returning our calls. My experience tells me that people have catastrophes and they don't return your call. They have problems and frustrations in their lives that are greater than returning a phone call. And I would just say that if it's somebody that you really see that there's some possibility with, is to be persistent but gentle. And not to have an expectation, an immediate expectation. Technology has made us, has given us a false sense of urgency.
Yes.
And it's a tool for those technology people in the room. They know that it makes us more productive, but it's not running our lives if we don't let it. And the problem is that we all want immediate gratification, and when we don't get it, it feels negative. It feels rejected, they should call me back. We don't really have time for that. If we spend too much time worrying about what other people are not doing for us, we're not doing what we need to do for us. Right. And I would just say, it's not a personal thing. And so that person should go on a list of follow-up, and at some point, it's either going to happen or it's not. 80-20 every place.
Yes, going back to Ellen's original statement, you really do have to be patient with people, which we're not. I've had this happen many times in my experience here in ABA. We recently had something happen where somebody's having an issue, a personal issue, and they tell me, but they ask me not to share it. Right? It's a real problem. And
that's what we are.
Yes. And someone called me up and said, I'm trying to get a hold of them. I don't get it. And they're a member. And I said, look, just do me a favor and be patient. Can't tell you why, just be patient. And of course, eventually they found out that the person when the person wanted people to know, was having a personal issue. So you really have to take that into consideration. You know, we get in these rooms and we ignore the fact that there's marital issues, there's children issues, there's health issues, there's parenting issues that just go on and on and on. And a lot of times you come in and you put on that suit and vest and say, you know, I'm a successful person. I want to be looked at as successful. So you don't share the downside of things that are occurring in your life. The other thing that I would suggest is, if you know someone else that knows that person, it would be very helpful to just ask them, say, you know Ellen Volpe? You know, have you had any communication with her? You know, and maybe they'll say, yeah, she never called me back either. All right? Well, now you know the person's not a networker. So as Ellen says, just move on. You know.
Has anybody in the room
fix
not
yourself.
returned a phone call lately? Drop something? Come on. Come on. It happens. It happens.
Just to piggyback that, you know, there's only so much time.
Yes.
And I struggle, I even had a meeting with Danny on this. Does anyone use a process for keeping in touch with people? It's like Sam, I know we'll do business together. I can help him, but I don't really know the next time I'm going to call or the next time I see him. So touches. There's certain people you know will be good. Does anyone have a program other than, I mean, you put it in Outlook and move it from month to month, but does anybody have anything that they use to make sure they do touches quarterly with the important
Anybody
people?
working a CRM here? So just a little, I don't know, it's not really a plug for anything, but you know what, oh God, this is really bad. Danny, I'm going to talk about Gittimer. There's nobody like Danny, and there's nothing more appropriate for anybody than Sandler. But Gittimer has something that you can buy on a monthly basis that is, I think it's called Ace of Sales, and it is a software thing that you can actually use to manage your connections. I'm surprised that many of you don't. I'm wondering what you use. What do you do?
Well, I keep a diary of everyone I talk to every day.
Right.
And what I'm supposed to do in the future. So if I talk to you today and you said, well, touch with me next week, I have a next week like a tickler in my diary.
Right.
And I have like a little system that I use for that.
Right.
But I think that his point's very well taken.
Very well.
You need some kind of touch thing.
Yes, you do.
So I may not be able to meet with you. I like meeting with people if I can, because it's a little hard. You get somebody on the phone, you don't know whether their kid just called up and broke their neck, or their car got crashed, and you're trying to get it in a conversation. So I find telephone calls, I assume they can't necessarily be good all the time, because you don't know what's on the other end of the line.
Right.
So I always try to at least try to meet with someone, which is hard to do, I might point out, because we're all busy, but we all eat lunch sooner or later, we all eat breakfast sooner or later, and if it can be convenient, I'm in your area, why don't we stop by and do that?
Right. You know, I want to make a distinction that I think is obvious in the room, but I don't want to make assumptions, because sometimes, again, we don't know how each person is processing information, and again, Danny is the guy to talk to about that. But the distinction between sales and networking, big distinction, please. Selling is not what you're doing when you're networking. And if you're talking, I really, I'm glad this is sort of coming up, because networking is not selling. Networking is mining for relationships that can be leveraged. And it has nothing to do with selling. And Danny will tell you that your selling is probably this much of your time. And it shouldn't even be on your mind when you go out networking. It's not what networking is about. So just a comment about that. And yes, I think that you should have a tickler, some type of a system. And actually I was talking with Stuart, where's Stuart? We were talking about, you don't mind, his son. Young people today don't understand the value of their databases yet. And it's the people in the room here that need to encourage younger people to understand why it's important to have a database, and one that works, that will allow you to be in touch with people. So, anyway.
Jeff, you had a statement or a question?
So one of the things, there's a lot of things that you know, everyone can do. We happen to use a CRM system and sell it, but everyone in our company uses it.
Yeah.
And I think what was just described here is really the old school version, quite honestly, of CRM. There are certain things in Outlook that I do. One of the things is that when somebody calls you with a referral or emails you, the best thing you can do is immediately do something, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a little scratch piece of paper on your desk that gets under the pile of more important papers.
Nobody can relate to
And,
that.
yeah, so just one, I don't know what anyone else does, but like once a weekend, I take all the scrap pieces of paper and I go through them. I fly a lot, so airplanes are very good for doing that.
Right.
And I'm always handing the flight attendants these piles of paper and they don't know what they are.
Right.
It's just the
They're secret.
week's worth of stuff. But you can put a recurring appointment in Outlook. That's a simple thing to do.
Yes.
You can send an email and say, you know, I'm busy, but quickly look at your calendar and give somebody 2 date choices. And that way say, hey, I'd love to talk to you or meet with you. Are these good dates? You could put a little red follow-up flag in Outlook. Most people don't use those follow-up flags, but they're pretty good. Or if you're lucky enough to have an infrastructure with other people in it who can help you handle that, that's good too.
I think the biggest thing that you said now is action.
Yeah.
This is the problem.
Waiting's the worst thing,
Yes.
because then you forget who referred that person to
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
And you have to scour through emails that are 3 weeks old, and you're obviously not being a good, you know, partner.
Such a good point, because on a daily basis, it's easy. It's like being a fish in water. The water is like, you can't really relate to it. And your day comes and goes based on what's, you know, calling the loudest. And you forget these little things that move business forward. I also just want to, something else just popped into my head in terms of a tool. And those of you who have iPhones, there's, and I don't know if you've shared that, Card Munch. Card Munch, it's excellent. You take a picture of the card, it immediately appears in your contacts, and you can either connect with them on LinkedIn, share it, or send an email to the person. It's not a CRM because there's no there's no method of follow-up with it. It's owned by LinkedIn, but it's a great little tool because you guys could be taking pictures of cards here now and actually emailing the person before you leave the room. Not that you want to do that.
It's a free app too.
Right.
So it's really
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, this afternoon after I think about what I've heard today, and I've decided that I want to get in touch with somebody in the room, is it your recommendation to first send an email reintroducing yourself, reminding them where we met and the purpose of getting in touch with them again? Or do you think that it is more effective to make that phone call and try and make that next connection?
How many people would like a phone call? Higher hands? How many people want an email? So, you choose.
Depends on the person, really. You know,
Well, it's also the busyness of the day.
one thing I don't like,
Emails at night.
one thing I don't like is text. You know.
Yeah, I don't
You know,
text
reading a
is
cryptic
not-
text message that, you know, I met you at such and such an event, you know, and I'm going to call you or something. You know, it's to me,
Yeah.
I'd rather have an email with some body to it or
Yeah.
a phone call.
I don't think text is appropriate like that. The text is to tell your wife or your girlfriend you're not.
Right.